event as well. So yeah, my name is Dr. Piyamon Pongsakorn, but it's easier to call me Belle. And so everyone, I ask everyone to call me Belle. That's my nickname, and it's easier to notice that people call me. Okay, so now I'm a researcher at the University of Birmingham, as Khadid said before, and I'm working under a project called ARLI to help businesses in West Midland do research on sustainable materials and waste management, this kind of stuff. So my background is in mechanical engineering. So first, I'm going to tell you a bit about my background, about my experiences, because it's going to be like the core of my talk today. So I did my undergrad in engineering in Thailand, and then after that I went to Germany, lived in Germany for like 3 years for my master's degree, and so after Germany I went back to Thailand and started working in a university in Thailand, and then I got a scholarship to pursue my PhD. So the scholarship was to do the PhD in Thailand, but luckily they also have the funding for me to do research abroad during my last year. So I went to the US, to America for 1 year to do research and work with the university in the US. And then after I finished my PhD, I started working as a lecturer in Thailand for about 5 years. And during the time, so during the time I worked in Thailand. So I was pregnant. I had a baby. So that's when I started a career as a mother. So as you can see, like I moved around a lot, and just about like 2 years and a half ago, like about 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago, I relocated from Thailand to the University of Birmingham, to work at the uni. So so what I would speak today, so I would compare about the countries, my experiences in the countries I've been to, I've worked in terms of how they treat or how they accept women in engineering field. So back in my undergrad at that time, it's like 20 years ago. So back then, the ratio between women and men in engineering is still like we have like low number, very small number of female engineers. So in during my undergrad, I think it's like 10% women, but by the time that I became a lecturer, surprisingly, that the number of female engineering students in Thailand, like almost every university, I would say, it's like half. It's like 50% female students in engineering, which is for me it's very promising. For how I feel. But then the thing is, after they graduate, like a lot of women, a lot of female students, they they left engineering field. They don't want to work in engineering field. They don't want to be an engineer. It's also this is I would say that back in Thailand, it's definitely because uh, the the perception, the narrative about that people have about engineers and women. It's like it's so like in some field. I want to give you some example, like in especially in civil engineering. Like if you have to go to the building site and work with lots of foremen or other operators, contractors, which are like mostly they are men. So when you're a woman and you walk into the site, like many times I heard from some students that came back and talked to me, and they said that like they just like didn't care, they just didn't listen to them just because they're women, which is like quite sad. So at some point, like yeah, some of them decided to leave engineering and to do something else. Sometimes it's just uh, do like master's degree in business administration and just change the field. Yeah, for my perception, I think in in Europe, uh, the uni, the faculty try to like to encourage women to study or to work in engineering field, but then the situation is like it's the opposite. Like less women like want to study in engineering field, but so comparing to Thailand, I think the opportunity here is larger. It's like that in Thailand. So that's in terms of studying and working. So that's for being female and a female engineer. But then for my situation, it's a little bit more complicated because right now I have a kid and I'm a single mom. Like I have I am like 100% responsible for my kid, so it's all on me. So the situation is like completely different from when I was single, from when I had no child. Uh, it's because like in Thailand, the 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 support for parents is quite like is I would say insufficient. Like they, for example, we in Thailand they have only like 90 days of maternity leave and that's it. If you're gonna take more, then you will not receive salary. So it's only 90 days of maternity leave, and then after that, you only have like normal annual leave day, uh, and it's quite difficult to manage. But in Thailand, the situation is different from here because if I when I was in Thailand, I had my family to support me. But when I relocated here to the UK, so it's me alone with my daughter. The thing is, uh, so I have to do the school run all myself and everything, and I have to work full time because due to the visa, I'm an immigrant. I'm on the tier 2 visa. and the visa said that you have to work full time. You cannot work part time. You have to work full time to be on this visa. So that's the constraints that I have here. So the main challenge for me here in the UK is the time management. Like how would I fit the full-time work and like also like full-time mom at the same time. It's quite a challenge for me. So so sometimes I ended up working at night, like many times. It happened a lot. So that's something that happened since I moved to the UK. Another thing is it's so I'm a single parent. I work alone. I earn the money, and this amount of money, like I have no one to share responsibility with all the expenses that I have. And again, like I'm on the visa, this tier 2 visa. With this tier 2 visa, I cannot receive any public fund. So which means I don't have like child benefit or like child tax exempt or stuff like that. So I have no access to public fund at all. So so this is the and also like for example, like since I work full time, so I have to send my daughter to after school club. Now she's at school, and the after school club it's quite expensive. So on top of like the cost of the visa, the cost of the health insurance, no access to public fund, no tax exempt or anything. Like I have to pay more for someone to look after my child when I'm working. So that's quite a struggle. But I think like working here, the good side of working here is since I started working at the uni, like all this time, all my colleagues, my line managers, my team, they they understand my situation, and it's because we're in academia as well. So work is quite flexible. So you don't have to like sit in the office from 9 to 5 every day. Sometimes like if I have to leave earlier to pick up my daughter, then like I said, I could continue working at night. So the hours are quite flexible, and the support from people around me is like, I would say it's amazing. Like they understand my condition, and yeah, let me manage my time and do my work on my own pace. Yeah, so from these challenges, what I my solution to my challenges, to my situation, to all the constraints that I have. So one thing, like in terms of time management, so I have support from people around me, but then I myself, I have to try to balance between work life and private life. This is something that I'm still trying to do it. Not very good at it. But then what I try to do is I prioritize things in my life, as everyone do. But the first priority, as I would say, it's not my work. it's not my child. My first priority in my life is myself, is my health. So physical health, mental health, this is the most important thing. If I'm sick, if I'm mentally ill, if I'm physically ill, that's the worst thing. So I couldn't work if I'm ill. I can look after my child if I'm ill. So I have to focus on this day is taking care of myself, focus on myself to be able to to uh, to work and to look after my child as well. So that's what I'm trying to do. Another important thing is it was a lot more like there are a lot more obstacles during the time that I just arrived in the UK, because I didn't know much, I didn't know a lot of people. But right now, like I have friends, I have more friends than when I arrived. So right now, like I have people to support, to help me. For example, during the lockdown, I uh, I needed support because like it's like we were locked in. I was locked in the house with a child, with my daughter, like 24 hours, 7 days a week. So at some point when they allowed us to form a support bubble, so yes, so that helps a lot. So what I would say from my experience is for whoever in my situation, uh, we have to accept that sometimes we need help. We can be strong, but we cannot like be strong all the time. Sometimes like we have to accept that, okay, we're like at the edge and we need help right now, and have to reach out and seek help. So that's the most important thing. And I also seek like professional help, professional support. I mean, in terms of mental health, to talk with professional people, the psychiatrist or something, yes, to the therapist to help me. So this is the solution from my situation, for what I've been through. So that's what I would like to share for today. So yeah, since I will have to leave before the session end and wouldn't make it to the Q&A session, can I take questions now?
Yes, okay. Thank you. So thank you very much for that. So I think we have got we learned a lot from that little talk. So we have someone said, thank you, you're an aspiring engineer and mother. So anyone can ask your questions here if you want in the chat function. One question that I have is that, so like you said, you did a lot of moving from Germany back to Thailand and back to the UK. So I'll say is, from your experience having been able to be moving into new countries, what would advice would you give someone, especially someone like a mother that is starting a new direction in their career and moving with a child to a new country? So the things you've learned that maybe if you had known at the beginning would have helped them move easier. Do you have any advice like that for someone in that situation?
Yeah, before I moved to the UK, so I was preparing for all the challenges, for all the difficulties I would face. So I think it's about being like mentally prepared to face all the challenges that you might you might find in the future. It's definitely not easy to move from one country to another with a little child and like all the responsibility on yourself. That's definitely not easy. But I would say, like I always say this to everyone, like if I can do it, everyone can do it. Yeah, but because like my parents, especially my dad, he worried a lot about me before I moved here, and he asked me like, how would you do? How would you? How are you going to do? Like doing all this alone on yourself? And then I told my dad that I'm not the only single mother in the world. It's like there are like many more. And for me, what I thought at that time is like, at least I was lucky that I got a job, so I know that I have money to pay the bills. Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, whatever happens is like, let's do it.
Okay, thank you. There's a question actually. So Anna has asked that which country that you have worked in have you found most accepting / accommodating towards female engineers?
Mm, I would say like in the US, in the UK, in Germany, like in Europe, Western Europe, and in the US. Um, like in the US, as you know, that's like this equality thing. It's like they 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 don't care about your race, about your gender. Uh, so it was. I didn't feel that I'm a female in engineering when back in the US. For here, I feel that comparing to Thailand here and like in Germany, it's much better. Uh, I would say that it was a bit hard in Japan because like I used to do research in Japan for like a few months and lived there for a few months. So at that time there were like very few women in the university because the university that I worked in it was they call it technology university as well. So there are only like engineering and STEM in the uni. So very few number of small number of women. And so over there in Japan, like I would say that it's not that they don't accept us. It's not that they didn't accept us, but I had to prove myself like a lot more than any other countries to be accepted. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that insight. So thank you so much. Since you said you're going to have to leave early, thank you for coming and thank you for the inspiring talk. You've got very good, obviously you're a very good, strong mother and you're one very strong female engineer as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kathy, as well, and thank you so much, everyone here for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. So no more questions. We'll move on to the next speaker. So the next person we have is Anna is going to be the next speaker. So I think she's got a camera up. Yes. So Dr. Anna, she has followed Anna Burton, has followed an unconventional path to current role at KLS Martin. She designs individual patient-specific implants for maxillofacial surgery. When she finished her PhD researching cardiovascular properties for biomedical applications, she undertook various research positions, through which she has developed a unique set of skills that were desirable commercially. So Anna today is going to be discussing the challenges she has faced when she made the decision to move from academia to industry and how a career has helped to shape the engineer that she is today. So over to you, Anna. Thank you.
You're able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes.
Perfect, great. So, yep, as I was introduced, I'm Hannah. I am going to be talking about some of the changes and opportunities that I've had over my career and how I've had to adapt to get to where I am today. So I am an IPS engineer, which stands for Individual Patient Solutions. I work for KLS Martin, and my role involves working with surgeons in the NHS, in private hospitals and all over the world. I work with them to reconstruct bony anatomy. This might be for cancer treatments, it could be for trauma applications or for aesthetic reasons. So it could be to augment somebody's face, or for orthognathic, which is where you may reposition somebody's jaw to get a better contour for them. Working with the surgeons, I'll design how the patient should look at the end of the case, and we will design planning aids and guides, models and implants, which are then manufactured and sent out to the hospitals. And this is all for head and neck reconstruction, so maxillofacial applications. So these are cranioplates, so replacing holes in the head, or mandible reconstruction, where they may remove a section of the mandible which could be cancerous, and then they can replace it with either a metal implant, or you can use a donor bone from somewhere else in the body to replace the segment that's missing. And I've got an example to show you actually. So this is some work that I presented to MPs at Westminster. So this is where this has come from. We start the process with CT data, and that is images, lots of layers of images, which when you build them up together, you'll get a 3D model. I'll use thresholding to segment out different anatomical features. So these could be the nerves or the teeth or just the bony anatomy. And then we can use that to make the planning more accurate. So in this case, there's a skull here, and you can see the purple section, we have a mandible. And then with the surgeon, we'll plan the resections and decide where the bone needs to be removed, and then you can go back to the CT data and make sure that when you're removing this section, you are removing all of the cancerous tissue. And then the defect will then need to be reconstructed. So in this case, there is a piece of fibula, and that is making the contour of the mandible again. So you can see the fibula section, which is a bone in your leg, at the bottom of the screen there. And you've got some guides that are on it, and those guides will help cut the correct angle and length of fibula, and those pieces of fibula will fit exactly into the mandible. And you've got some guides on the mandible as well, and that's to make sure that the correct section of the mandible is resected. And then we can pre-drill your screw holes, which is going to make sure that the implant fits in position. So when this all fits together, the case will be exactly how we have planned during the session with the surgeon. Each case obviously is patient specific. So this case will not fit another patient. Each case is different and comes with its different challenges. The parts that we produce are either additively manufactured, or they could be produced through conventional methods as well. Your implants will be made in either a titanium or in a PEEK, and then you can have polymer or metal guides, and then models can be produced as well. So all of these pieces are produced for KLS. These are produced in Germany and then sent off to surgeons worldwide. But this particular example was some work that I did when I was at PDR. So I'll show you my career path, and you can see where I've come from and how I am where I am. So I come from an academic background. I did my bachelor's at Aston University, and I started thinking that what I wanted to do was traditional engineering. So when I say that, I went and did an industrial year with Cummins Engineering, and I was working on 90-litre gas engines. So these were engines that were used for fracking. I didn't feel particularly comfortable with the work that I was doing. It didn't feel like I was making a positive impact, and I wasn't getting satisfaction with the work that I was doing. But I gained quite a lot of industrial experience, manufacturing experience while I was at Cummins. So it was a good experience, but helped to shape a different direction that I wanted to go in. Next, I took my PhD at the University of Birmingham in mechanical engineering. And at this point, I moved into a biomedical field. My research was looking at cardiovascular applications, which was very different to the engines that I'd been working on. But I realized that the biomedical gave a better, I felt better working on the biomedical. I knew that I was going to be helping people. So I realized that this was an area that I was happier moving into. Also, the male-female split within my PhD lab was very good. We were, I think, at some points 50-50 split with male-female, and the females that I've worked with have been super supportive, great role models, and it really helped inspire that, yep, this is a field that I feel happier in. I also did some teaching while I was in this position, and then I took a research fellow in chemical engineering at the University of Birmingham, and this was looking at novel implant design and embedded therapeutics. So at this point, I started looking at additive manufacture of implants. This was in titanium, and then using antimicrobial cements inside of these, and I was using FEA to model how the strength was working with these implants. So at this point, I've had some industrial experience with Cummins. I've started to go down this biomedical field route. I'm working with ISO standards. So all of this experience is leading me into where I was heading. So my next position was with PDR, which is in Cardiff Metropolitan Uni. This involved leaving University of Birmingham, which I'd become very happy at. I was used to the people that I was working with, the labs, the resources. I was very, very settled in Birmingham. And this was one of my big changes, leaving that particular university. And it was a good change for me. PDR is a funny setup in that it is half academia, half industry. So I was still doing my research, still publishing, still applying for grants, but I was getting this extra industrial experience working with clinical collaborations and also working with a couple of manufacturing companies. So I was, at this point, there was a branch appearing, and I needed to decide if I was going to continue down my academic career or move fully commercial. And in 2019, I took the jump and moved to KLS Martin, and that's where I am now, working as an IPS engineer. So yeah, as I said, I'd had this industrial experience which helped shape where I was. I had experience with this additive manufacturing in my research, which I use in my day-to-day job now. I was working with ISO standards, which obviously are incredibly important in industry, and in particular ISO 13485 was when I started using that at PDR, and that's day-to-day activities now. I have to use 13485, and then I've always had in my mechanical background all of this CAD work, and that's really helped with what I do now, designing implants, working with CAD software and different software packages for all of the 3D reconstructions that we do. So when I moved to industry, I had to leave academia, and this was a massive change in my life, and I had some big hurdles to overcome. It was mentally quite difficult for me to go. So leaving academia, I was going to lose all of my research. That was made very clear that my new role would have no research. It was all commercial. All of my work was going to be given to me, and I was going to be instructed on the direction I needed to go. I had ongoing grant applications, and in academia, there's always something that's coming. In a week, in a month, next year, you have these grant applications that you've put in half a year ago and you've forgotten about, and they might come in tomorrow, and you might get that funding and you might secure your permanent position. And at the back of my mind, I had some fellowships, they might come through, and it was a lot of work that I put into those. So to give those up was quite a big mental leap. The office in the UK did not exist that we were going to be moving into, and this has had to be set up from scratch. My line manager was going to be in Germany, and in the picture you can see the two colleagues that I work with in the UK. So we work remotely from the rest of KLS Martin. But the biggest issue I had with leaving academia was working out whether or not all of those years I'd spent at university were a waste of time, because I could have gone into industry after I'd finished my bachelor's. So why had I waited until this point, and why make the change? But now I'm in my job. I love it. I've such good job satisfaction. I know that every case that I'm doing is making an impact on patients, and I don't mind a Monday morning. I didn't believe people who said that they love their job, and I love my job. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. But some of the changes I've had to make to get to this place, I've got here. So the location, leaving Birmingham and moving to Wales seemed like quite a big change for me. A bigger change was when I went to work for KLS Martin. I had to do 6 months of training in Germany. I don't speak German. I think I went on a childhood holiday to Germany at some point, and I was going to have to spend time away from my husband. So that was a huge change, but I have a very supportive family, and those have been okay for me. The field of engineering, I've kept changing and moving, but I've now found the field that I want to be in. So these have been very useful changes for me. The style of work that I've been doing, so when you're doing your PhD, it's very independent research, and now I'm told this is the job that you will be working on. But each case that I do is my own case. I'm still working independently. I'm just being told this is the work that you will be working on. And yes, the big change in my life was moving from academia to industry. But as we know, life likes to throw you curveballs, and you need to accept these changes, these opportunities. When a branch appears, you need to consider, I'm very happy going where I was planning to go, but consider whether moving down a different path might bring you different opportunities and different challenges, and potentially might be a better option for you. The curveballs that we get thrown in life, you can't predict. So obviously, we've had COVID that's been over the past year, and that's brought up lots of changes that people have had to accept in work, in life. And I've got my own new curveball that I'm going to have to now work with. And that is, I've got a 14-week-old baby. I'm currently on maternity leave. And this is a huge change for me. I've been very career focused to this point, and I'm now a mum, which is amazing, and I wouldn't change it. But I'm going to have to go back to work at some point, and I'm going to be a working mum, and I've got no idea how I'm going to manage that. But it's a new challenge, and I'm going to go for it and see how it goes. And again, I said I've got a very supportive family. I know that they're going to help me. It'll be fun. So I guess the take home from my presentation is I've always worked on my continued professional development. So I became chartered a few years ago, and that's always helped me to think about my goal and my career trajectory. So I've always had this plan. I've always known where I wanted to go, whether it was get a permanent position as a lecturer. And to get there, I needed my publications, and the publications would help me secure my grants, and my grants would help bring the funding in, and then I could have my permanent positions. But there are changes, there are different options. You need to be open to them and not see change as a bad thing, and see the opportunities that you can have. All of the experience that I've gained to date, you need to know how your experience can be translated to help other people. So in my case, my experience that I developed over all of my time in academia translated very well into industry. So no, when I said potentially all that time in academia had been a waste, it wasn't. If I hadn't done all of that, I wouldn't have had the skills that I had that was so desirable in industry. And finally, there is such thing as job satisfaction. I really didn't believe it, but I love my job. So go, and if you're not happy in your job, then maybe you need to have a look at changes and see what other career paths you might be able to go down, because finding a job that you love is worth all the money in the world. It's just, yeah, enjoy what you do. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. That was really inspiring, and well done with all the different careers that you've done and you've gone through. That is really good. Congratulations, you're going to be an amazing mom as well. So thank you for the amazing presentation. So if there are any questions for Anna, please feel free to put them in the chat box. We will address them at the end during the Q&A. So now I'm going to move on to the next speaker. So now we have Dr. Lauren Thomas-Seale. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Lauren, she is a lecturer in engineering design at the University of Birmingham, and she graduated from an undergraduate degree in aeronautical engineering in 2007. And since then, she has worked in industry, research, and administration, both full-time and part-time. So she has 2 daughters and shares childcare responsibilities with her partner. So she's hugely enthusiastic about her research and design for manufacturing of biomedical devices. And, you know, even though she's working academia, has challenges, she is allowed her to work flexibly around the family. So I believe Lauren is going to give us a speech on career path and how she's managed all these different challenges. Over to you, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Khadija, and because I won't be here at the end, thank you so much for organising this wonderful event. I'm one of the people who has to duck out early. I'm so sorry. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will talk about them in the end. I'm also going to turn my video off whilst I present because my Wi-Fi can be a little bit dodgy and I don't want it to get overstressed with presenting and video on at the same time. So I will turn that off. Can you see my screen, Khadija?
Yes, we can see your screen.
You can see it, marvellous. That's a good start.
Thank you.
Right, I feel like I'm going to repeat some of the wonderful insights that were given by Belle and Hannah, but I think they're important, so I will repeat them in my own context. So yeah, I'm an academic at the University of Birmingham. My teaching area is design and I do research into design for manufacturing and also biomedical engineering. Not going to focus too much about the technical side of my job. I'm going to talk more about my career path and the challenges that I've had. As you might infer, my career path has not been straightforward, but I like to think that all the challenges that I've faced have, in the end, had a positive outcome, and I've learned something from them. So I actually wrote this presentation this morning. That's not a testament to how important this event is. It's more about the fact that I have no time. And as Belle said, you learn to prioritize and you learn to work very efficiently, which I think is definitely something, is definitely a good outcome from having small children and working as well. You become a productivity ninja. And I just bought a book that was called that. So I Googled career path this morning, and these are the type of images that I got. So linear, going upwards, and mostly men. So I wasn't terribly impressed by that. My career path on paper, so if you go to my webpage or if I was presenting at an interview for a new position, it would be quite linear. And I would tell you all about these things that I've done. I would tell you about all the skills that I've learned and all the accomplishments I have. And I wouldn't tell you about any of the things that went on in the interim. I wouldn't tell you how hard it's been. And I think sometimes this sort of lack of transparency, not that you want to go on about that in an interview situation, of course, but the lack of transparency about how most people's career paths are actually not straight lines at all, sort of makes everybody feel like, oh my gosh, look at that person, how am I ever going to be like that? Then I found this image from DHL, so big kudos to them, because if you look really closely you might spot a woman in that picture, but nevertheless it's all wibbly wobbly, and I relate to this picture far more than anything else I saw. So this morning I was kind of sketching. I sketched out my career, and this is a lot more realistic than the linear one you saw before. It's absolutely riddled with ups and downs. And after most of the ups, there came like a lot of downs. But each thing, I think, as I said at the beginning, it taught me stuff. Mostly it taught me how to be very, very, very resilient. And as Hannah was talking about, adaptable to change. So what are the squiggles? I think the squiggles are actually the most important thing, and they're what I'm going to focus on today. So undergraduate degree, which as Khadija mentioned, was in aeronautical engineering. I'm going to put it out there straight away. I had massive anxiety in my 3rd and 4th year. The pressure was heavy. It was a hard subject, and I worried a lot. I worried so much I made myself ill, and I still worry today. So that hasn't changed that much. I think mental health, it is a taboo. We don't talk about it. We don't like to be vulnerable. But I think the reality is that most people who are overachievers, or most people who work in a difficult environment, and I think particularly for engineering where women are often a minority group, I think mental health is an issue that needs to become a little bit more talked about, so we all normalize it a bit more. So yeah, anxiety's been familiar to me for many years. So after a few wobbles in my undergraduate, I graduated, but because I'd had such bad anxiety at university, I went into a temporary job straight after university. My parents were not happy with me at all. That's another story. But I took the time in the temporary job to actually think about what I wanted to do. And I decided to go into industry. And I'm going to echo Hannah here, because I went into industry and I went off into the aeronautical engineering industry. And shortly after starting, I had a bit of a crisis of faith when I realised that, and this may sound completely naive, but I realised that a huge proportion of the aeronautical industry and aerospace industry is based on sort of weapons that kill people. And I couldn't rationalise that to myself. So I made a big leap and I went off and did my PhD in biomedical engineering, which seems quite strange, but actually, for those who may be interested, aeronautical engineering and biomedical engineering have quite a lot of key skills in common. So I know quite a few people who've done that leap very successfully. So then I did my PhD. As you can see, there are a few wobbles there, and then a big high. I had a baby, and everybody thought I was crazy at the time and that it was interesting timing, but she was and is the light of my life, and I would never ever change that. However, then I had to finish my PhD with a baby, and that was tough, particularly because I'd run out of funding. So I was working in the evenings and looking after a baby during the daytime. Eventually I graduated, and then again I had another career break. I hadn't really been able to think about the future whilst I was juggling PhD and baby. And also part back then, which was 2015, I think, back then part-time academic positions were not very well, they just didn't exist. And eventually I emailed the PI at Birmingham and I said, would you consider this post part-time? He said yes. So I applied for a job at Birmingham. And this was also a tactical decision because it's near where my parents live. And that was a pretty key motivator in relocating to Birmingham and to settle in the Birmingham area. So all the way through, you can sort of see interim little squiggles. I thought it might be worth noting that environment is a huge challenge. So I'll echo what Hannah said again. In biomedical engineering was probably the first time when I'd experienced any kind of gender balance during my education and in my career, and it makes a huge difference in terms of support. But that's not always the case. And even if you work in a great environment, still being the minority group, it's hard, it's challenging, and it it's a mental toll that you have to deal with all the time. And so then I became a lecturer and had another baby, which is another massive high point. So the funniest thing between my two kids is that everybody thought it was a bit crazy having one during my PhD. And then I think sort of the general consensus is you get a permanent position. Everyone's aspiring to like a permanent position. Research fellows are contract positions, and a lecturer is permanent. So I got there and I didn't have to worry about maternity leave anymore. I would actually get paid maternity leave. But actually, when I look back now, I think my maternity leave during my PhD was easier than the one when I was a lecturer, because during my PhD, I was working on one project and I was kind of working on my own and finishing my PhD. But when I went back to work after having my baby when I was a lecturer, I was juggling so many projects and my brain was skipping around between so many areas. honestly, at one point, I rang the doctor and I said, I don't think my brain works the same since I've had my second baby. It felt like I'd had a lobotomy. Anyway, I had a very understanding line manager at the time. And he said I could phase back, and so many weeks down the line, I finally began to feel like a functioning human again, which was quite a relief. Recently, been promoted to senior lecturer, which I think I'm extremely surprised at. However, with the ups also come the wobbles, and I mean, if I'd only just got used to being a lecturer, now my imposter syndrome is crazy. But it probably goes without saying that along all of my career path, imposter syndrome is, again, I'm very familiar with it. And I have a few enlightening thoughts on that a little bit later. So away from like my career path, I thought that Khadija said that the people who'd registered for this event had some specific questions about challenges. So I thought maybe I'd give some perspective on the challenges I faced and what the solutions are. So Belle talked about health and how important mental and physical health is. I can't stress that enough. I'm never going to be the type of person who doesn't worry. I'm always going to worry. And I've realized mental health, if you don't have your mental health, you don't have anything. You can't take care of other people. You can't do a good job. So really, the most important thing is to take care of yourself mentally and physically. It has to be the #1 priority, even when you have kids, even when that's only 10 minutes a day between them going to sleep and you going to sleep. Career breaks. I mean, we kind of view that what women take career breaks and we just view that's just for children. It's not necessarily true. I've had 2 career breaks. In both instances, they gave me time. They gave me time to reflect, time for different reasons that I needed it. I needed a little bit of downtime to take a breath and figure out what I wanted to do. I don't really think that there is a solution. I actually think that career breaks just need to be a little bit more accepted. And I do think times are changing, and I think they are accepted now. Career crisis of faith. Again, I'm going to echo what Hannah said. It's a challenge when you have a crisis of faith and you realize your career is not aligning to your values, or you're going down the wrong track. But the reality is you're trying to align what you're doing every day to your personal values, and effectively you've got to do what you love. And when you do what you love and you enjoy your job, it's just, I feel like it's something that you really have to aim for, even if that means changing what you were currently doing. What Hannah said about being adaptable in your career is so important. Sometimes life throws us changes we weren't expecting, and then they just turn out to be the best thing. Babies. Yeah, well, babies are a challenge. They're a challenge that you know, women have to face. And I'm hoping as times are changing, more men, I do feel like there's a social shift where men are a lot more engaged in parenting and a lot more, not just actively engaged, but we talk about it more, right? We praise dads for being great dads. I mean, certainly I couldn't do my job without my husband. He's a phenomenal dad. The reality is there's a lot of changes that needs to happen in industry and academia, so we don't feel like we're at a disadvantage by having maternity leave. I don't think there's a solution. There is no good time to have a baby. There really isn't. It's that quote is true. Sometimes you're going to be in a slightly more financial position and you can have a baby and you don't have to worry about money, but you might also have a lot more work pressure that you do have to worry about. Certainly I worked a lot more during my second maternity leave than I did in my first maternity leave. However, in my first maternity leave, I had no money. So really, in the end, there isn't a right or a wrong time. You should do it when it's right for you, or if you don't want babies, then it's a moot point. Babies and career, it's a juggle. I mean, absolute credit to Belle. You have a huge amount to juggle with your daughter and with your career, and you are such a role model. I don't think there is a solution for the babies and career, or children and career. My solution was to find support, and the support comes in the form of my family. I moved closer to them. Now my brother lives around the corner and we can support each other with childcare when required. My husband actually had quite a career change, so that his job used to require him to do extremely long hours. And it just was really, really difficult for me to manage everything at home. So he took a career change so that he could work more regular hours and not work so far away. Environments, they can be tough. So one of my roles at the University of Birmingham is I'm EDI lead for the School of Engineering. So I spend a lot of time trying to think about how we can create positive culture change in engineering. But the reality is it can be tough and things are changing slowly. Again, find your support. I think we all need friends. We all need good colleagues. Find your support and develop your resilience. So I think resilience is something I've learned all the way through my career. One of the speakers who's coming later, Dr. Naomi Green, she has been my absolute support all the way through my time at Birmingham. And I couldn't have done it without her, quite frankly. And you've got to go find those people who can support you in more than just being a colleague. Work-life balance, it's a juggle. What can I say? It's like, you know, babies and career. I have to say, working at home has made it a little bit of an easier juggle than before. Again, I agree with Belle, prioritize. You just got to prioritize. And these days I have learned that sometimes I have to say no. I try politely to say no, or I try to delegate, because otherwise I'd be in Zoom meetings for 8 hours a day. So finally, imposter syndrome. So I've been on the Aurora training course, which is a higher education training course for women. And honestly, the biggest takeaway message for me after several days of training has been that imposter syndrome is completely normal. Live with it and embrace it. And in fact, the trainer at the time went as far as to say, when you don't feel imposter syndrome anymore, you've plateaued and it's time to move on. And I thought, well, that's a fantastic way to look at it. So imposter syndrome is a good thing. We all feel out of our depth. We're all learning all the time. And when you start to feel like, oh, I can do this, I'm not an imposter anymore, maybe it is time to move on, to develop yourself, to aim a little bit higher. So what are the squiggles? And in summary, I think the squiggles in my career path were actually the most important things and the most valuable things. I didn't go into what all the highs and lows were because it wasn't, you know, it's not always the most relevant thing. But for me personally, I think finishing my thesis with an 18-month-old baby, that was a pretty high point, not one that goes on my CV, but I think credit to both me and my little girl that we managed to get there, and my third baby, of course, the thesis. And what were the squiggles? They were mental and physical health, super important. Values, integrity, and priorities. I am still working out all of these things. So this leadership course I'm on, a lot of that is about giving me the space to figure out what my core values are, and how to align the work I do every day with those values. Family, friends, resilience, it comes for every challenge you have, you become more resilient. You know how to deal with it next time. Confidence, as you put yourself in unfamiliar situations, feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm very much buying into that phrase. Feel the fear and just do it, because next time it won't be so scary. Work-life balance, I think that the pandemic has been absolutely awful in so many ways, but the shift to virtual meetings and working from home has definitely been good for my work-life balance. And authenticity. I tried to start authentically. I think it's good for everybody to talk about the realities of working and careers, and you know, when it's hard, we're not all just straight line linear career paths. Life is full of bumps, and it's totally normal for it to be like that. And if we all were a bit more authentic, perhaps then we wouldn't all feel like imposters sometimes and out of our depth. Anyway, thank you for listening. I'm very happy to take questions now, and I will try and turn my camera back on.
Thank you, Lauren, for that really super inspirational talk. I mean, even though I've known you, all the different challenges and the career breaks you've gone through, it's really I think it's quite inspiring to listen and see that people do go through these things, so then we know that we are not lonely when we feel like that as well. So, it's not just you, other people have gone through. So that was really inspiring. Thank you. I think one question I would want to ask is, so because you did have the two different career breaks, because people don't really see career breaks as positive, like you said, like your parents were not happy, people around you would be like, why are you doing that? Why are you not just working in engineering immediately? So during those career breaks, where you are now about to come back into, moving from aeronautical engineering to biomedical engineering as well, what kind of advice would you give people that actually switching engineering areas, and how can they make it easier on themselves, or what should they do to sort of make the transition easier for them?
I've got a bit of feedback. Possibly. Okay. No, I can still hear myself speaking, but anyway, I'll carry on. If it's all right for you, that's fine. I think certainly with the pandemic, just not being hard on yourself. It has been so difficult for everybody. And if you've got through it, whether you're having a career break or you're in your career, whether it was an active choice or it wasn't, don't be hard on yourself. If you've been given some time to have a think about where you are in your career, try and embrace it. Try and embrace that time and that space. I definitely think the time gives you a bit of headspace, right? I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but when I get to the end of a holiday, I finally feel like I've got a little bit of clarity away from the office to kind of think about the future. In the day-to-day job, it just feels like it's relentless. There's never any time to reflect. I think in a way, personal development training courses give you that time to reflect away from the day-to-day pressures. And in terms of the career breaks I had, I mean, I can say give yourself a break, but my God, I beat myself up so much during my career break, and that I wasn't on when I finished university, I wasn't on a grad scheme. Yep, my parents were very angry about that, considering how much they invested in me going to university. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to make those decisions during my final year. I needed a bit of time. Also, I didn't mention in the presentation, but my husband was finishing university. Well, then my boyfriend, now my husband, he was finishing university at the same time. I wanted to live near him, and it was important to me. And ultimately, the decisions I've made since then have been with him, and I would still do that because I feel like I am happy and I can be good at my job if my home life is happy. So, but then again, similarly, career break after my first kid, I beat myself up a lot, but I would suggest that other people don't do that and try and see it as an opportunity to reflect. Certainly with little babies, you don't get the time back. You don't get the time back. So if you're part-time, actually, I didn't mention the presentation. I've been part-time for a very long time now. I've been 80% since I had my daughter. Since I came back into academia after I'd had my daughter, I've been 80%. I don't have any intention of changing that anytime soon. It works. It means I can be a mum, I can focus on them, I can be there, but I can also focus on my career.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there no other questions? I think there was one thing that I actually wanted to ask, because I noticed that you did mention and answer it as well. So there is a bit more gender balance in biomedical engineering compared to other engineering disciplines. Why do we think that is the case? Is it just a unique thing? Because I have noticed that as well. Do you have any insights?
I think that Hannah mentioned it, and I mentioned it too. I think, well, I don't want to gender stereotype at all, but I think that with being a woman, there comes a tendency to want to care, to want to help. And in biomedical engineering, that is what we're doing. I mean, when I was very young, I had aspirations of being a doctor and then realized absolutely no, I could not do that. But in a way, coming back round to biomedical engineering meant I could help people whilst being an engineer. I think that's why there are more women, but also there's a kind of like cumulative effect, right? The more women there are in a field, the more women come into the field.
Yes.
So I mean, and we support each other within that environment.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm gonna let you go off now because you have to leave. Thank you so much for giving us this presentation. It was really inspiring, and thank you. Your inspiration to all of us as well. So well done.
Thank you, Khadija, and thank you to everyone for listening, and all the best. Good luck with your careers.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, so we now have next is going to be Janani Gandhi. So she's going to be the next speaker, and Janani is a chartered mechanical engineer working at Rolls-Royce since 2014. She was initially working in the aerospace sector as a graduate mechanical engineer and then as an installations component designer before she moved to the submarine sector during her maternity leave in 2020. So she's going to speak to us today about work-life balance, being a new mom, and experience of working in a range of industries. Over to you, Janani.
Okay, hi everyone. So I thought I would first start off with the first industry I had involvement in, which is biomedical industry. So during my undergraduate master's degree at the University of Birmingham, I did a year in industry placement and a summer placement at DePuy Synthes, Johnson & Johnson. And they manufactured knee and hip implants. And I was based in the foundry in Ireland, in Cork, in a city right at the south part of Ireland. And I was there in a foundry as basically a manufacturing engineer. So to describe what the work was like, I was based in an office, but I would regularly go down to the shop floor, which was just on the ground floor, and I was on the first floor, and regularly interact with the operators and the production staff on trials that I was doing, manufacturing equipment, any new products that were being introduced into the foundry, into the site. I'd be looking at that and helping gather information and details on those products to get them all finalized and handed over to operations. That kind of work was quite exciting. It's sort of day to day, you're doing deliveries and you've got quick targets that you can see. So you've got deadlines that you're trying to meet. You're trying to meet a production rate, and involved going to the office and going to the manufacturing facility every day to work. After doing that placement, I kind of shifted my focus to understanding that although I liked biomedical industry, I was more interested in the design of detailed components. And so I then applied to Rolls-Royce for their graduate supply chain scheme. It was this scheme that I entered in 2014, and I was able to do 4 rotations in the scheme, where I got to go to 4 different parts of the business and see how they were doing things in different areas. So as a supply chain graduate, the aerospace sector that I was working in was broken into different supply chains. So they're focusing on different components in a civil large engine. That's what we're talking about here. And I got to do a number of different roles, from looking at manufacturing, looking at design, looking at stress. And ultimately, after doing those placements, I decided that I wanted to become a design engineer and have sort of get a good, strong background focus on design engineering. So this was around 2016, 2017 that I joined the installations supply chain unit. And the installations on a jet engine are sort of how I describe it's the components that you don't quite see when they show you a picture of a jet engine. So it's all the brackets, all the pipe work, all the bits that go on the engine that's connecting all the other larger components like turbines and compressors and things together. And it's the sort of the shell as well that you're looking at. And I worked in that as a designer for 3-4 years, where I was every day going to the office, spending the majority of my time on CAD, so using NX, just designing components, and I'd be doing sort of concept designs, and then going into really detailed designs, deciding what bolts, how many bolts are needed, and making sure there's no bolt clashes, like going into the really specifics of the detailed designs, as well as looking at the overall picture of the engine as well. So doing that was quite interesting for me, and I was very happy in my job, being designer. And then I also did my chartership in 2019 using all that experience that I'd got as a designer, and I'd sort of developed a good background or base knowledge as an engineer, and that was my focus. And then during end of 2019, I had my son, and when I was in maternity leave, COVID happened, and at that time, as you all know, the aerospace industry took a big hit, especially the travel industry, which as a civil large engine engineer I was tied to. So I decided then to do a sort of a sidestep in my career path, and I'm working now still at Rolls-Royce, but in the submarines division here. So that's a whole new sector that I'm being exposed to, and another industry that I've got experience in. And what I found is when I was working as a sort of biomedical engineer, you'd have to, because it was so much of a focus on manufacturing, the idea was that I would have to come into work every day to see what's happening, what's going on with the plant and with my products. When I was working as a design engineer, although I didn't need to, now thinking back, go in every day, at the time that was the understanding that everyone would come to the office and design at the office together. Whereas when COVID happened, everyone went 100% work from home. I think the idea now is that that's one of the jobs that can be quite flexible. There are good bits and bad bits of working from home and working in the office. So when you're working from home, the things I've found great is that you can concentrate quite fully on the task that you're doing with minimal interruptions. You've got the saving in terms of time and cost from traveling to work. Some of the negatives is because I changed jobs during the pandemic, I haven't been to the office as much, so I haven't built up that sort of team spirit, knowing who exactly you should talk to in your new team. So that kind of progress comes slower, getting integrated, because not everyone's at the office. So every time you go in, there might be someone new to meet, but it'll be longer to build those relationships and those professional relationships that you need in work to help with your projects. Another thing is, since my son was born in 2019, me and my husband have been sharing our childcare duties. So his work's been quite good with being flexible, and so's mine. So throughout the day, we basically just trade off who's taking care of our son in different like time slots. So we work most of the day just trading time slots with each other and trading our son with each other. So that's something that's possible when we're both working from home. So that's been pretty good for us. And then I would say for anyone who's sort of looking at jobs and is applying and going to internships or interviews, it is worth asking your interviewer what they expect from you. As I've spoken earlier, if you are going into a manufacturing heavy role, they might expect you to come into the office every day or work certain hours, shift work, for example, that you won't have any flexible working there, or it could be similar to my work where there are some flexible working hours and you have flexible as in coming into the office and working from home. So that's an important question, I think, that you should ask if you go to interviews nowadays, and something that is openly spoken about at offices and with your managers. I guess the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was trying to figure out what industry or what job role you want to go to. So I worked in biomedical, aerospace, nuclear, and none of them were completely planned as the industries that I wanted to go into. I sort of go find the job that I think that I'd like and try it out and then swap over and see what the scope is in jobs available. So it's all right not to have a plan of exactly where you're going and what you're doing. It's okay to try and find what you like to do and try lots of different things. And that's sort of what I really liked about the graduate scheme that I was in, because I worked in Derby, I worked in Bristol, and I had some involvement in manufacturing sites and in 100% office sites as well, and I worked in Hucknall as well. So it was just seeing how different places and different roles to find your preference. And it could be something that, for example, I was very happy for 3-4 years as a designer, but unless if COVID hadn't sort of given me a little push, as well as being on maternity leave and having a bit more time to think about myself and what I wanted, I'm not sure if I would have changed roles when I did. So use life's unexpected circumstances to take advantage of that, to try and figure out what you want and what makes you happy. So that's most of what I wanted to say. If there's any questions.
Thank you for that, Janani. So thank you for that insight on working in industry and having moved from different having moved from different positions, different areas of the same industry. So that's very insightful and inspiring. So we have a question at the end of the panel.
Oh, so I forgot to say, Khadija, when I found is that when I was in any sort of mechanical engineering team, I find that the amount of women to men ratio was about 10% really. But whenever I went into a cross-functional team, so ones that would have chemical engineers, material engineers, or civil engineers, or anything other than that, there's a better ratio of women when it's multiple disciplinaries. It's just something I've noticed through my working life in the different teams that I've been in. So when I was a designer, there was only myself initially as a designer, and then one other female designer after a couple of years came as well. So it was only 10% in that team. But then when I was working in one of the more materials focused team, the ratio was almost 50-50, and that was because most of the women working there were material engineers.
Okay, that's really interesting That's very interesting to notice. Guess we can chat about that as well during the question and answer panel. So thank you very much. Lovely, presenting, nice hearing about your different career paths, and thank you for that. So now we have the last speaker, Dr. Naomi Green. So Dr. Naomi Green, she is a researcher in biomedical engineering at the University of Birmingham, and she has previously worked for Harrop as a consulting systems engineer. Career changed direction after being diagnosed with a degenerative condition in her spine. So she's going to speak about the challenges she has faced in her career as a woman with disability, the importance of being true to yourself and recognizing the value you can bring to an organization because of your experiences and diversity of thoughts. So thank you for coming today, Naomi.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for sorting this out, Caddy. It's been really nice for me to catch up with people I've known along the way in my career and find out what they're up to. So let me just try and share my screen. Share the right presentation because I'm writing one tomorrow for a disability focus group. So let's make sure I do the right one. There we go. All right, can everyone see that okay? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Great, fantastic. So yeah, again, thank you very much. Oh, that's really embarrassing. My painkiller alarm's going off. Never mind, I'll have it when I finish talking. It's fine. So there we go. Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Naomi Green. I'm a researcher at the University of Birmingham. And yeah, I'm going to talk to you about my career, my experiences, and hopefully help you learn a few things that I have along the way, which overlap with a lot of other people have said today. So I'm a mechanical engineer. I did my degree here, graduated 2004. So kind of scary that I've been in and around this department for nearly 20 years now. I've spent 15 years working in industry and academia. I was a consulting engineer at Atkins and Arup, and then changed to do my PhD in biomedical engineering. I'm now a researcher in what we call translational medicine, which basically means trying to get research out of the university and into either the market or clinical practice as soon as possible. And I'm very passionate about creating and supporting a more diverse engineering workforce. So as I said, my early career, to be honest, everything was shining for me. It was all going very well. I spent time working at Atkins pre and during my undergraduate degree. I worked on the Potter's Bar rail crash, and that really inspired me to realise that I could give answers to people who'd lost loved ones or had been injured, and I think that sparked my interest in kind of there being some kind of social element to my work. So then, having graduated, I joined Arup and worked heavily in crashworthiness and crash investigation, largely using finite element analysis, as you can see. So I did the safety case for all the concrete barriers that have been being put into the motorways over the last few years. For me, that's probably one of the most visible consequences of my career when I'm stuck in roadworks and I'm like, this is my fault, or partly my fault anyway. I then took a sideways career move. The automotive industry crashed slightly, particularly here in the Midlands. I was sat twiddling my thumbs at work with not very much to do. And if you're a consulting engineer and not very much to do, you get sacked. And I was not in a position to go out and kind of win that business myself because I was more junior. So I was asked if I wanted to go and help design Dublin Terminal 2. So my 3D CAD skills were needed. Someone in Arup had pitched to Dublin Airport that wouldn't it be great if you built an airport terminal split with the roadway running through the middle of it. So effectively check-in was on one side of the road and everything else was on the other side of the road. And then they realised that that meant they had to fit all the services and all the people and all the baggage through a bridge. And trying to work out how to get everything through that bridge was proving to be a challenge. So they asked me to come on board. And I then spent, I think, about 3 years working in the baggage handling industry, traveling the world all sounds so glamorous, but it wasn't. I used to fly into the airport, work at the airport, stay at the airport, and fly out. So I've seen a lot of the world's airports, but not a lot of the world. And then everything started to change. I started having a few issues with my back, nothing major. I was sent for physio. I took the odd painkiller. And it was gradually getting worse, but still very much not too much of an issue. While I was an undergraduate, I'd had ME for about 4 years and had recovered from it. But I started to feel that kind of sensation again of not having enough energy, being exhausted all the time. I went to HR and said, I'm not coping, and my line manager, and said, I'm not coping with my workload. Can you help? The outcome of that was that my boss went off sick with stress because we were under stress, which meant it all then fell on me. And eventually I went to HR one day and they said, could you go and get yourself signed off sick, please? Because, you know, no one's listening. Go to your GP. I'm sure you'll get signed off, which I did. And initially, most people don't know this, but initially I was signed off with exhaustion and stress. And I think about a week or two into that, I woke up in the middle of the night and started sneezing. And at that point, everything changed. And I slipped a disc. I didn't know that's what I'd done at the time. The pain was just excruciating. It was nothing I'd ever experienced before. I lived alone at the time. So I was kind of crawled to the toilet and back, and I had no idea how to deal with what was happening to me. But fortunately, when I'd seen that GP, I'd said, look, my back doesn't feel right. Could you refer me to a new physio? Which he'd done. And that appointment was, I think, a day or two after. So I managed to crawl down the 2 flights of stairs from my flat, get in a taxi because I couldn't drive, and go to the physio. And the physio was like, oh, I can see you're in agony. Sit, stand, lie down, walk, whatever, you know, whatever it takes. And he listened to what had happened to me in the previous few years and said, oh, you've got a problem with your discs. And I was like, no, I haven't. Everyone keeps telling me it's muscular. He's like, no, I really think you have. You need an MRI. So 2 weeks later, I'm sat with a neurosurgeon and my mother in a consulting room, and he shows me a picture very, very similar to this. This is my actual MRI. And I have to say I was shocked. I was like, how can that have been going on inside me? So for those of you who don't know, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the discs between your vertebrae, you can see the ones at the top are white because they have water inside them. And the ones at these two at the bottom are black because the water has gone out, the disc is degenerating. And because the disc is degenerating and the material's changed, you get what they call disc bulges, or colloquially slip discs. And these bulges push on that white column that you can see coming down, which is your nerves and your spinal column and ligaments and all sorts of things. And I knew at that point that my life had probably changed, but I don't think I knew how significantly it would change. I had surgery to remove one of the bulges in my disc. I went back to work after about 6 months, I think, and I worked part-time. And Arup were good, and they tried to kind of create a new job for me. And the surgeon was like, I can't be very clear with you on what your life is going to look like. You know, it's just a question of wait and see. But the one thing he did say is, I don't think you're going to manage with all that traveling that you were doing as part of your job. So that was really the only piece of information I could give my employer at that point about what I thought my future was going to be like. And they did try, but I got bored quite quickly. Consulting is about going out and meeting your clients and being on site, and I was just like, well, without that, this doesn't interest me anymore. I'd also got a bit bored of baggage handling. I mean, what does it matter if you've got get your bag 2 minutes earlier? I mean, as long as you don't lose it, right? Like it's not that big a deal. So I got quite bored. So I decided to jump ship, and I came back to the University of Birmingham to do a PhD. I had a newfound love of healthcare. And realizing the importance of that. So I did my PhD in total disc replacements, a bit of a case of engineer heal thyself. I was not arrogant enough to think that I would actually fix myself, but I was hoping that I might contribute to that for somebody else in the future. And the PhD really gave me, although it was hard, because it's hard for anybody, it took me 7 years to complete it because I had several periods of sick leave because of my back. But it did give me the time and space to learn, I guess, who the new me was and what my body was capable of and what it wasn't. The flexibility of being able to work wherever and whenever I wanted really sort of allowed me to do that. So yeah, it was great. I now work here at the university as a researcher in translational medicine. So I've worked on 2 projects, Innovation Engine and IMechE I currently work on, who are funded by the European Regional Development Fund to support local businesses to help them develop medical devices. And as I said before, get them into clinical practice if we can. And I love doing it. And again, I still have a reasonable amount of flexibility in where I work and when. And I have very supportive colleagues, so it's going well. So yeah, challenges faced, I think, along with my physical health, which I've already talked about. I don't think you can go through that much trauma and change in your life without having mental health issues. And I have had and do have, and it comes and goes. The switch from industry to academia was initially fine. I expected it to be different. I expected, PhD life to be very different and very individual. But I think what I didn't expect was then when I joined academia as a member of staff, that continues. And yeah, I feel sometimes we're not very, compared to working in industry, we're not good as working as a team. We're not as good at kind of all the kind of policies and things that need to be in place to support people. So there are times where I'm like, we could be doing this better. Other people are doing this better. As I said, I've had multiple career breaks. I spent most of the pandemic on sick leave. My back decided to slip a disc the week before we went into lockdown, which was massively inconvenient for all sorts of reasons. In some ways, I spent the first sort of 3 months of the lockdown not really caring what was happening to the rest of the world because I was on so many painkillers and drugs. And I had to shield as well. So I have severe asthma. And I had to shield for 4 months. I didn't leave the house at all whilst trying to recover from a spinal injury, which I think you can probably imagine is not good. So I've lost a lot of mobility due to that injury and due to the fact that I haven't been able to get out and about during the pandemic. And things are improving. I'm double vaccinated now. I'm in my office at work. But it's a slow process, and I don't know whether I'm ever going to get back to where I was pre-pandemic, but I'm going to try. So some of the issues I have had at work, difficulty getting reasonable adjustments made. So if you have a disability, the law says that your employer should make adjustments to try and help you. That can be buying you equipment. It can be changing your job role. And often I have very supportive bosses who say, yes, we can do that. That's absolutely fine. But then it's on me to go and get those implemented. And that takes up a lot of my time. And I'm often working with central people in the university who don't know me. And it's just very difficult process. I have recently experienced some quite nasty discrimination, which I won't go into details about. All I will say is once I raised it with senior management, it was immediately dealt with and dealt with well, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. And I do often feel quite other. I don't have a disabled role model or a support network. I don't have that in my personal life. I don't have that in my work life. And so often I'm trying to change something at work or do something at work to help myself. And I just want to reach out to somebody and say, how did you do this? Did you ever get a support worker? Did you ever change this? Did you ever change that? How did you do it? And I just don't have that network of people. But on the plus side, I'm going to stop being negative and be positive now. So my lessons learned, which I think are quite similar to some of what everyone else has said, look after your health whether that's mental or physical. Without it, everything else falls apart. So yeah, be kind to yourself, which I think echoes with some of what Lauren was saying about imposter syndrome and anxiety. Lauren and I are very good friends, and we go backwards and forwards on a daily basis via WhatsApp, like supporting each other and being like, no, don't worry about that. That's fine. It's okay, you know. So give yourself a break, basically. I think Lauren and I say it to each other all the time, but then don't actually do it, but try. One thing I have really realised is that you and the people you love are more important than work. And I say that because I love my job, I'm ambitious, I want to do well. But when I have had career breaks and everything's fallen apart, work isn't what picks me up. Work is not what helps me get to the toilet, changes the bed sheets for me. Like my partner helps me get dressed every morning and helps me get undressed every evening because I can't reach my feet. You know, he's an absolute star, and I give work. So I always say work gets the best of me. It gets all my energy. It gets everything that I've got. And that's not fair. He deserves some of my time, and not my time, but like the good time of me, you know. So we're currently working on that together. I'm working part-time at the moment, just to try and I could work 100%, but then I do nothing else other than that. And so it's to value him and our life together, and make sure that we have time to enjoy our lives together. I think Lauren touched on this as well. We've been on the same training course. It's obviously got to us. So being true to your values, you know, it's not very comfortable when you're not being yourself. And I think that then affects your mental health as well. And there's no harm in believing in what you believe in, and politely telling people what that is. And I think I got better at that late. Stand up for your rights when you need to. So I was talking about the discrimination side of things. The law is there and it is on your side. And if you read up about it and use it, it will help to back you up. Ask for help and support from the people around you. I have to do that on a daily basis. Please will you pick that up? Please will you move this? Like, I sent an email out to my lab a couple of days ago that was like, I need to work in the lab. It's a mess. I can't clear it up. So could you? And because you made it, so please you clear it out so I can get in there. Yeah, the other things I wanted to say is your diversity of thought has real value. You might not think it does, but your organisation will work better when it has more ideas and more understanding. You know, we all know that predominantly the senior management of organisations is pale and stale. And it's important that they hear what our lived experiences are. They don't have those experiences. It's not that they're bad people. They just don't understand the points of view of people who are different from them. So I think it is really important to share your experiences to help with that. You can make change in your organisation. If you, oh look, it's Americanized it, sorry. You can make change in your organisation. Yeah, I spend a lot of time doing EDI work, and it rewards me. I enjoy it, and it can be a slow process sometimes, but you know, you do get there eventually. And I just wanted to point out that the COVID world is actually more accessible to me than the real world, the normal world. So I have been able to do things during the pandemic that I can't normally do. I'm currently on this leadership training course. And if that was in real life, in a conference centre, you know, an hour's drive away, I wouldn't be able to get there at the moment. I've been able to go to friends' weddings, and social events, and like my friends run a weekly board game night, and I had to stop going because it made me too tired for work the next day. But now I just drop in and do it online, and I do it for an hour and then I leave them. And me and many other disabled people are worried that as normality returns, some of this stuff is going to get taken away. And so, yeah, I guess it's a plea to bear that in mind going forward, is that actually making things digital and accessible is possible. and to not unwind that going forward. So yeah, I'm very happy to answer questions. If people want to contact me in the future, there's my contact details. And yeah, happy to answer questions in a bit with everyone else.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Thank you for feedback. So that was really inspiring, and you're very strong. Well done for everything you've gone through and for paving the way for disabled people to have, an easier path. Like Anna rightfully said, that you are forging the way for others to have an easier path. Because like you said, it is good to have that support network of someone you can go to, like, how did you do this? So I think hopefully you will be that person for others that would come along as well. So thank you.
I was quite touched yesterday. I was having a conversation with 2 PhD students on WhatsApp, and
think we lost Naomi. Okay. Hello. I think Naomi is having connection issues. Hopefully she can. It's going to be so that she can join us back. Can everyone hear me? If I can see yes, and everyone can still hear me. Okay. Thank you, Hannah. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for the wonderful speeches and talk and advice and suggestions given to people. I think it's very beneficial. We have run out of time. I just actually have 1 or 2 questions. People that are still listening, the attendees, if we have any questions, please put in the chat box so I can ask the speakers. I think one question I had for Anna, I think the question is that, because so I had a question for Anna. Let me just find my notes. So there is a question that someone asked. Said, is part-time work ever possible in the industry? And I think it has been answered, because like you heard, Naomi and Lauren both work part-time. So it is possible to be able to work part-time as a civil engineer.
Sorry.
Are you back now?
My computer restarted, because that's what you need in the middle of a presentation. Having said how wonderful and accessible digital stuff is, clearly.
That's really nice. But thank God you're back now. So I was just asking that someone actually asked in the pre-event survey that, is part-time work ever possible in the industry? And I mean, I believe you and Lauren have even touched on this already, because like you said, you both actually work part-time mostly. So I think that answers the question that part-time work is possible. But maybe what you could point out is, how can someone actually go about being able to ask? So that people might be, scared or apprehensive about asking their bosses if they'll let them work part-time. So is there a way they can approach it to be able to get the answer they want? Do you have any advice for that?
Okay, so at the moment, I'm almost unofficially part-time, so I'm still on 100% contract, but I had a lot of accrued leave from being off sick for nearly a year, so I'm using that to work part-time as an experiment, which I think a lot of people do when they come back from maternity leave as well. You accrue your holiday when you're on maternity leave, so I know Lauren did this, and when she said she phased back in, she used that accrued holiday to allow her to do that. So that's one option sometimes, just to give you a bit of space, I suppose, while you adjust. So I guess I was pointing out I'm kind of adjusting to my new body and my new normal after what's happened to me in the last year. And it's been really helpful. I am currently applying for a new job, and will probably ask for 80% if they offer it to me. But I've had conversations within the department, and generally it's been very well received. But it's usually been my fear. I am scared of going 80%. It's not because other people are stopping me in any way. It's because I don't want to miss out, on the time to improve my career and be on the money. So, but I am coming to the realization that that time is worth it. The time to be able to feel better and be more present outside of work is important.
At my work as well, people have been going down to 4 or 3 days a week, and the management has been quite respectful and have been supportive of that as well. So it is becoming more common, and it's not just women who are taking it. It's everyone who needs it, men as well, for childcare or for what if they want to as well. So it is becoming more common now I'm seeing it as well.
Yeah, another thing to think about is doing compressed hours. So you work a 4-day week in 5 or something like that. So Lauren's partner does that to free up a day. I'm about to go back to 100% for a while to trial it, but I'm going to make sure I have Wednesday morning off so I can lie in. And that sounds really stupid, but that lie in, oh my God, what a difference it makes. So I'm keeping that, but going back to work in the afternoon and doing an extra hour later in the day. I think people are getting more used to the fact that people work different. People work best in different ways for lots of different reasons.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yes, so the question I had for Anna was, because you have experience of moving from academia to industry, having done it, what advice would you give for someone that wants to take up that challenge to make the transition easier?
For me, it helped moving to PDR, where I was still doing research, and in my role I could still be publishing, I could still be doing the novel things that I enjoyed, but also I was gaining that industrial experience at the same time. So I didn't jump with both feet into industry. I went slowly, and I know that's not always possible, but there are other institutes out there like the MTC in Warwick, which is more research involved at the same time. So